3, 2, 1. This is the Mindy
and Carl
on Money podcast, where we talk about what happens after you reach financial independence.
Why do we call this show Mindy on Money?
Because Carl on Money doesn't have that alliteration kick we're looking for.
I still think it would be pretty good. I don't know.
This is the Carl and Mindy on Money podcast. Nope, that doesn't work.
Okay. Anyway, on this episode of Mindy, you have to say and Carl.
And Carl.
On Money, Mindy and I talk about the ways we've used our money to add to our lives. But before we get started, let's take a quick break. Today's episode is sponsored by Facebook, and more specifically, it is our Facebook group.
That's right, Carl. Today's episode of Mindy
and Carl
on Money podcast is sponsored by the Mindy
and Carl
on Money Facebook group, except it's only called Mindy on Money. It's not called Mindy
and Carl
on Money. Sorry, sweetheart.
Why did you exclude me?
It didn't fit. They wouldn't let me do parentheses.
It is pretty clunky. I don't think anyone would have remembered that.
Yes, so just think of Mindy, and you can think of my Facebook group, Mindy on Money.
Nice.
Right, and you can join in our discussions at facebook.com/groups/Mindy on Money. Maybe we should make a group for you too.
Maybe.
But we're probably not gonna.
No.
All right, so last week we talked about the art of subtraction and the things that we have used our money to buy out of our lives. We've used money to remove the hassles from our lives. This week we are adding it back in and talking about the concept of how we are and are going to use our money to enhance our life.
We should back up a second. A lot of people know our story, but I want to elaborate on that a little bit. I feel like most of our life we've lived a pretty bare bones existence. We've had good experiences, and I guess houses are nice places, but for the most part, our day-to-day life, if you would observe us and you wouldn't know who we are, you would probably think we're
poor.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there, but you went there. I remember at our previous house, I was working on our car. I don't remember what was wrong, but one of our neighbors, it got back to me that one of our neighbors was talking about us and saying that she was happy that she wasn't married to me or something like that because we don't have any money because we have to work on our own cars. I'm like, no. You don't understand. We have money because we work on our own cars. You're the broke one.
But we didn't say that to her.
No, we would never do that. But we lived a sparse existence, right? Like, I hate working on cars, but I know how to do it, so I always did it because that was my mindset. If you know how to do something, you shouldn't pay someone to do it because that's just silly. And I think that might be like a Midwest blue-collar mindset. Would you agree with that?
I am Midwest blue-collar, so yeah, I had that same mindset. I would agree with that. I think it's the mindset of... it's a good mindset to have when you're on your path to financial independence. But as you get closer to the end, you should reevaluate. Like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, evolving with your money, you should reevaluate what it is you're spending your money on and what it is you're saving your money on. Because you don't want to be saving money on stuff that you hate to do, like cars.
Yeah, brake job, which if you do it yourself, might cost you $50 to $100, and might cost you, I have no idea what it costs. I still have never paid for one. That savings is going to mean a lot to you when you're young, but not so much when you're older. Therefore, it might be I think it's worth putting up with some stuff, some of that struggle when you're young to get that money rolling. But when you're older, it's time to let go. And I think that's a great segue into this episode because we're going to talk about stuff we have added to our lives. I still don't know if I'm ready to pay someone to do the brakes, but now we have EVs, so we'll never have to have a brake job again.
Do they not have brakes?
They do, but they never use them because the motor turns into an alternator and stops the car instead of the brakes. That's why you do the one-pedal driving. You don't usually have to hit the brake.
I don't know what that means.
Anyway, let's move on.
Well, before we move on, we have to give credit where credit is due. None of this would have been possible if we had not had that conversation with Ramit. So we definitely need to give a big shout out to Ramit, who encouraged us to loosen the purse strings and use our money to make our life better. And I think that's ultimately what we got out of the experience on his show and throughout the year and a half that it's been since we recorded. We're constantly looking at ways that we can use our wealth to enhance our life. And what we've discovered is life is actually pretty good day to day.
Yeah, I think this was probably the biggest takeaway from Ramit. So what he did is he said, well, if there's something that adds value to your life that would make you happy, you should definitely do it. So this threw at least me into an exercise thinking, okay, what could we spend our money on? What could we do? And it turned out there wasn't much. There's definitely some things, and we're going to give very specific examples in a moment. But I think probably the most powerful thing it did is made me realize and be thankful for what we have now. Like, we like our house, we like our cars. If I had 10x the money we had now, we would still live in the same neighborhood, maybe in a slightly different house. We'll talk about that in a second. But our life is pretty good, and I think it took liberating ourselves to spend money on whatever we want to really be able to realize that, at least for me. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's correct. I think we were so focused before on what something cost, we tried to reduce that cost all the time.
Yes.
Instead of enjoying what it was that we were doing. I think it was always in the back of my mind how much it was costing.
And I still think about that. Like, I think this bull, if you're watching on YouTube, our Wall Street bull model, which I love, we should give him a name. What should we name the bull? Mindy?
Bob
the bull? Okay, that's got an alliteration. I think it was like $30. So I still know the price of pretty much everything we've ever purchased, which is kind of weird. I wonder how many. Do you keep track of that in your head, or?
Almost exclusively.
What does that mean?
I don't. Maybe exclusively isn't the right word. Almost 100%.
Okay.
Like, I know how much almost everything in the house cost.
I think it's good, and we'll get to that a little bit.
I don't think that's healthy at all.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about waste in a moment, in a couple minutes.
Okay. We have not used our money to free up our time as much as we would like. We're still super busy. And one thing that we might have done if we weren't so busy is go and see a house in our neighborhood that was listed for what we thought was a very low price. And no, we're not going to flip it. It was already done. But it was listed for a very low price based on its location and its amenities. It had an indoor pool. And we have an outside pool, which means we can use it about 3 months out of the year. But this indoor pool you could use every single day. So it was priced too low in our opinion, but we're so busy we couldn't find time to go look at it. Perhaps we could have gone and looked at it if we had finished this flip-flapping house and made an offer on it and purchased it. It's, 50 houses down, 25 houses down. So it's in the same neighborhood. We would be with all of our friends still, but now we would have an indoor pool instead of an outdoor pool.
Yes, we have a pool now. It's pretty janky, but I love to swim. Like, it's a big thing of water in the backyard, and it's glorious. If I could have had that all year around, I totally would have went for that. And to build on what you said, if we would have hired some of this labor out, we could have had this house done and in a place to sell and perhaps been able to make a move on that house. I don't think I would have felt comfortable doing anything with that house, with the way our current house is. We're almost there, but it's still not done. And I should have. It's pretty hard to hire stuff out here in Colorado, but my friend Eric has helped us, and I could have engaged him earlier.
Yes. So bottom line is, finish up your projects.
Okay, I'd like to talk about some other random things we have loosened up on. And there's one that's not here in the outline, but I just remembered it. And this might be I think this is the most important one of all. Do you know what I'm thinking?
Not a clue.
Really?
I have no idea what's going through your head right now.
It's our health. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, you signed up for this yoga pod thing, which is very expensive, but I fully encourage you to do it. What is it, $140 a month?
I think it's $120.
Okay. Well, I got that price wrong. I said I had it all in my head.
Yeah.
And I have a membership at our local rec center, and I'm there almost every day. I would say 2 out of every 3 days I am there. as Mindy toasts the camera with a martini if you're watching on YouTube.
On Wednesdays, we drink pink.
That goes contrary to what we're talking about right now. But another thing we also did is we signed up for I don't know what it's called, a private medical service. I don't think it's a concierge doctor, but it's a...
I think it's a concierge medical facility where you can go in. I mean, you have to have an appointment, but you can call them and get an appointment like that week, which is not the way it works with the big medical facility that we have health insurance that we go to. And the benefits of this concierge doctor is that you can go in almost any time. They will see you. They will, you have an emergency, you can go in there. You don't have an emergency. You just have like, oh, my neck is doing this weird thing. You can go in there. And they don't take insurance. You pay cash for it, but you can see the doctor with incredible ease.
Yeah, it's amazing. The first time I went in there, I think I sat down with the doctor for 45 minutes, which you never do. Like, I never even see an actual doctor when I go to the one on our ACA plan, which is fine for the most part. I just think that's more of like a Walmart experience. And this fancy new service we have is, what's a level above Target?
Nordstrom Rack.
Nordstrom Rack. Okay, so not Nordstrom, but Nordstrom Rack.
Yes.
It is pretty good. I feel like we're talking to someone who's actually listening to us and not just trying to ship us out. Some other things we do, supporting small artists. We've been around town to see a couple small bands recently. What was the last one we saw? Shout out to the Hella Goats.
Hella Goats, that's like helicopter, but Hella Goats. If you have the opportunity to check them out, definitely take that up because they are hilarious. They're good. And did I mention they're hilarious? The singer is like hilarious on accident, I think. I don't know that he's trying to be that funny. He just really is. It's a great, great concert. We will link to them in the show notes.
And he had a Tiny Desk concert on NPR that we'll link to as well.
Ooh, yeah.
I buy books. A new Stephen King book came out, and it wasn't with this one, but there was another book that came out a couple years ago, and I went to the library to reserve it, and there was like 100 other people who also wanted it, so I don't think I would have gotten to it, or the library wouldn't have had it available for me for at least many, many weeks. So I'm like, I want to read the book. I'm just going to buy it, although it hurt a little bit. How many times do you reread a book? But then I thought, this isn't such a bad thing. I'm supporting the artist, and then I can just gift this book to someone who I think would enjoy it. So now, if there's a book that comes out that I think I might enjoy, I just buy it, and then when I buy it, I think of who I want to pass it on to after I'm done reading it. And I feel pretty good about that.
So you buy actual books. I bought Kindle Unlimited, and it is actually coming up for renewal, and I am going to renew it because I really, really like this service.
Cool. Next up, air conditioning.
Air conditioning, the best invention ever.
When I was a kid, I lived in Chicago, and our house did have air conditioning, but my parents would never, ever, ever turn it on. I think it might have came on like probably less than 20 times in my childhood, and it had to be extremely hot. You're just covered in sweat, and it was just horrible. We had a split level, and all the heat would go to the second floor.
Which is where the bedrooms are conveniently located.
Yeah. And the parents would be like, oh, no, we can't turn this on. It's cost too much money. But now I like to be cool. So whenever it gets hot, that sucker's going on.
And I don't know what the cost of air conditioning was way back when, but my parents had the same plan. I distinctly remember being a kid, laying in my bed in Central California, inland Central California, none of that ocean breeze to cool you down. And I remember lifting up my shirt and putting a ice cold washcloth on my stomach, hoping to cool myself down. Was air conditioning like $400 a minute back then?
I don't know. It was probably like 10 cents an hour, but 10 cents meant more back then.
Yeah, not that much more. It was ridiculous. My parents, and it was hot. It was like 100. And my parents are like, oh, just open a window. You know what? I'm going to tell them that the next time they come over. Hey, it's warm in here. Oh, just open a window, Mom.
Okay, this next one is a big one. We bought a new car, and it is a fancy car. After all the incentives, I think it was $35,000. So, and we've hardly ever bought new cars. But this was a Tesla Model Y, and we just took a big road trip in it, which I thought was great. What did you think about road tripping in the new car?
I thought that road tripping in the Tesla was going to be a little bit stressful before we went. I thought Are we really going to have enough charge to get from where we need to go to the next place that has a charger? And it turns out that my fears were unfounded because Tesla has spent how many years?
Many years.
Many years. Thank you for that exact number. Tesla has spent many years building out their charging network. You can go cross country, right?
Yeah.
Up and down, side to side, diagonal. You can go wherever you need to be in the United States. Tesla can get you there from charge point to charge point. And the way they do this is you type into their own in-car navigation system, I want to go here. And they're like, great. That's more mileage than you have charged for. So start here and go to this charging station and then continue on your trip. And what's actually kind of funny is in Wyoming, which is where part of our road trip went, there's very few chargers. There's enough to get you through the state, but there's very few chargers. So every time we stopped, we'd see the same people at every single charge stop. That was kind of funny.
Yeah. Our next one, travel. We used to book cheap hotels and bad airfare. We've talked about this a lot, but just to go over it again real quickly, we don't fly out early in the morning, and we get nicer hotels. Like, I'm not a big hotel person. Like, I don't really care about the room. It's mainly a place to sleep, and all hotel rooms look the same when your eyes are closed. But I like a centrally located one, especially if it's in a walkable area. That has a lot of value to me.
All hotel rooms don't feel the same when your eyes are closed. Sometimes you close your eyes and you're like, wow, this pillow's lumpy and this bed sucks. And so we have been doing better hotels with comfortable beds and nice pillows.
Our last one, this is a pretty important one too. This is similar to our health, I think, on the importance scale. And this one is facilitating fun interactions with people that we care about. We just went on a cruise, and it just wasn't our family. We brought my mom, my sisters, and their partners on the cruise, and we paid for it all because they couldn't, and we thought it would be a fun thing to gift to my mom and their family. At Economy, if you were there, you might not know this, but Economy did not pay for the opening party and your beer. We paid for that for you. But we wanted to do that. We wanted to give the people there a good time. And I thought it went great.
I thought so too. And not only that, but we also hosted a pizza party. Adriatico's, which is across the street from the Fairfield, where most people stay at Economy, makes a pizza that, was it the Bearcat pizza? It's enormous. It's like, I think it feeds 412 people. So we bought several of these pizzas and brought them over and had a big pizza party. Are we going to do that again this next year?
Maybe.
Yes, we are. We're going to do the beer party again and the pizza party again. So if you are thinking about going to the Economy conference, solidify that. That's Economy, ECONOME, conference.com, and book your ticket as soon as you can because it will sell out because it's such a fun event. Cincinnati in March, you might be thinking, do I really want to do that? Yes, you do.
And a shout out to Bill Yount from the Catching Up to 5 podcast who co-hosted the pizza party with us and paid for some of that pizza as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Okay, so we've talked about some of the things we'd like to spend money on, but that's going to be different for you. This effective spending is really a reflection on your values. If you look back at ours, we value our health, so we're willing to spend more money on that, probably a lot more than most people. We value walkability when we travel, so we want to get a hotel in a nice place. We like the fun little parties that we host, but just because we like that doesn't mean you're going to like it. This is going to be different for you. But that's where spending for happiness comes from. You have to figure out what makes you happy and where you're going to deploy your money. And this isn't necessarily easy. You're going to have to experiment with it. We'll talk about that in a moment. But that's really what this is all about, your values.
All right. Let's talk about waste. That was a theme in the Ramit episode where I repeatedly said, I don't want to waste my money.
I think that there is a lot of waste in this household. I walk into a room and the lights are frequently left on.
Don't look at me. We've got 2 kids. They leave everything on.
Well, I don't think they're in your office. Every time I go in there, like you leave your Yeah.
You come in there and I'm in the bathroom and you're like, lights off everywhere. I'm like, I was coming right back. Now I have to turn them all back on.
I don't know. I don't think you're as good as turning off the lights as you are. But I digress. I get that out.
Yeah, I don't think you're as good as turning off lights as you think you are either.
I'm awesome at turning out lights.
Okay.
So waste is an interesting thing, because I used to think that like spending money on something we could do ourselves, like maybe spreading our landscape rocks, which we paid someone to do. We had 100 tons of them, and I had actually looked at renting a tractor to do this myself. I know nothing about tractors or driving them, but I could have learned, yay, YouTube. But we spent money on that, on paying someone to do that. And the old me would have said, this is wasteful because you could have done this yourself, or you could have changed the car radiator yourself when that broke on our Honda. Yeah, I think it's a fine line between waste and value-based good spending. What do you think about that?
I think that I would feel like it is a waste to pay somebody to make my food. Not at a restaurant, but like to pay somebody to bring me a cooked meal. Because I like to cook. I don't think it's a waste at all to pay somebody to do something that I don't know how to do. Where we find the quandary is paying somebody to do something you hate but know how to do. And when you can't afford to do that, it's silly. If you knew how to change brakes, but you hated doing it, and our net worth was negative whatever, and you're like, I'm just going to hire this out, that's a waste of money. But now that our net worth is not negative whatever, it's positive whatever, and you hate working on the brakes, hire that out. Because in terms of your net worth, how much does a brake job cost?
I have no idea. I would imagine at least $200, but probably
$200.
more.
Let's call it $500. If you're spending $500 for somebody to change your brakes, you don't have to worry about it. And the $500 is not going to ding your net worth. If your net worth is $500, then absolutely change your brakes if you know how. Don't change your brakes if you don't know how to do it. That's a really bad one.
Pro tip.
Yeah, pro tip. But I think it comes... One thing that you and I have been historically bad at is thinking of cost of item or service in terms of our net worth. Thinking of cost of item in terms of our time. We have no time at all. We didn't even have enough time to go look at a house that would have opened up a whole new world for us. We definitely don't have time to go change the brakes when we could just take it someplace and they'll do it for us.
Yeah.
Since you hate it.
So here's something I think is wasteful, but I think a lot of people have value, and I'm curious to hear your decision. First class or business class seats on a plane. For me at least, that's a silly deployment of money, but everyone else in the world seems to be in love with that. Like, oh, I got business class on blah, blah, blah. I don't understand the attraction.
First, I fly Southwest, so there's neither. Everything is cattle class. What is your height? Are you 5'10", 5'11"?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I'm 5'4" on a good day. My legs are like a penguin's. I have tiny little legs. My body is all torso and no legs. So when I'm sitting in an airplane seat, my legs don't even come close to touching the seat in front of me. I can cross my legs, frequently do, cross, when I'm flying. So for me, first class is an absolute luxury that if anybody wants to give me, I will totally take it. United, American, Delta, call me up. You can sponsor my podcast and fly me first class, and I will be very thankful. But I'm not going to pay for it because that's something that I don't find value in and I don't need. However, we have tall friends. Aaron and Angie should fly first class if they can afford it. Evan, Daphne's favorite tall guy, he should fly first class if he can afford it because their legs are so long that they're going to be very uncomfortable in the regular seats.
So it's a leg issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you are super, super tall and you're so uncomfortable in your airplane chair and you can afford a better class of ticket where you have more leg room, absolutely do it. But I mean, maybe if we flew to Europe, I might want to do business class, but first class is so expensive and it's not something that I find value in.
Okay. I have a confession. When we're on a plane that has first class, when I'm walking through it, I try to fart in the first class section.
You say that on the Mile High Fi podcast, not on the Mindy on Money podcast. I'm so embarrassed. Okay, we're going to change the topic now and move on to the concept of the fun bucket.
Wait, what's that? Fun bucket or fart bucket? Fun bucket. Okay, sorry.
I am auditioning for new hosts. You can be the Mindy and whoever your name is on Money podcast because I'm done with fart jokes.
You would miss me.
I live with you. I wouldn't miss you at all. Anyway.
I had so much value to this podcast, though.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm just an afterthought in the title and for most of it, but I don't know.
You're not an afterthought in my life, sweetheart.
Just the podcast?
Just the podcast.
Okay. This might be the last episode, which will be fine.
This isn't close to the last episode.
And if there's any divorce attorneys in the audience listening...
you don't email Mindy@money.com or Carl@money.com. Mindy on Money. Yeah. Mindy@MindyOnMoney.com and Carl@MindyOnMoney.com. Okay. Anyway, back to Mark.
The fun bucket. What is the fun bucket? Tell us what the fun bucket
is. I first heard of the fun bucket from Mark Trautman of marksmoneymind.com and Mark's... Where are you going?
I'm looking up something. Continue to talk. It
you
pertains
can't just
to the show.
walk away.
No, it pertains to the show. You're going to like
Mark's
this.
moneymind.com and Mark's Money Mind podcast. His episode this week, episode 19, is all about the fun bucket and donor advised funds, which are parallel but slightly different. So definitely give our friend Mark a listen on his podcast, episode 19, for really, really detailed fun bucket information. But essentially, the fun bucket is a bucket full of money that has been accounted for mentally, but not yet spent. Mark uses it to take friends out to dinner. And thank you, Mark, and your fun bucket for that delicious dinner. And he uses it to upgrade his seat on a plane, or even to upgrade a cruise from a regular suite to a lavish suite. And since you've mentally accounted for the money in the fun bucket, the idea is that it's easier to spend. So you take out of your big pile of cash, what Mark did was took 25% of his annual spending out of his big pile of cash, put it into his orange Home Depot bucket called the fun bucket. And now whenever he does anything outside of his regular spending that he wants to have fun with, he pulls it from the Home Depot bucket. And then when it's empty, the idea is that 25% of his annual spending will last him 4 years. So then when he runs out, he simply replenishes it. So this is, a side note, similar to the donor advised fund. The donation has been made in this calendar year. You take usually it's stocks. You take stocks that you have realized a huge gain on or whatever, and you donate them to your donor advised fund. Let's call ours the Jensen Donor Advised Fund. And next week, we're going to talk to Sean Mullaney. We actually already recorded that episode, so I know a little bit more than I did when I recorded that episode. But essentially, you take this money, you put it into your fund, and then your fund can allocate as it sees fit. But you've already taken the tax benefits this year that you donated to the donor advised fund. So similar, but like taxically better.
Taxically better.
Yes,
Mindy
you
just
heard it
made a
here
new word.
first. If you want to listen to the Mindy on Money podcast, I think I'm going to make up a new word every single time we record.
And that was taxically?
Taxically.
Okay. Maybe
I
we
used
should...
it in a sentence, so therefore it works.
Yeah, maybe we should call it the Mindy Advised Fund, or just for short, the Mindy Fund, the big MF.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, again, Mindy@MindyOnMoney.com if you would like to audition for the role of my co-host because I'm getting rid of mine.
I can't wait to donate to that big MF. The Mindy Fund.
Okay, so the fun bucket kind of gives you permission to spend. But that's okay because you might just learn something about yourself.
Yeah, I like the fun bucket. When we saw Mark Trautman up in his hometown, I felt kind of bad. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy you lunch." I'm like, "Oh no, you don't have to do that. There's two of us and one of you." He's like, "No, it's from the fun bucket. I have to spend this money or something like that. So I appreciate that. It's not only money for you to spend, but if you think about it the right way, how Mark wants you to think about it, it forces you to spend that money. That money is in there and you have to use it for fun. And that's it. I think that's great. I like the idea of, so if you just stayed within your comfort zone and spent on everything that made you comfortable and did nothing else, I don't think you're really going to grow. I think spending is a skill that's a weird way to think about it, but I think it's totally true, and it's probably underrated, especially us who have been so averse to spending. We have to learn how to do it, and one of the ways to learn how to do it is to force ourselves to do it and make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable. And not everything is going to be a success either. I hope Mark thinks that his lunch with us was successful and he doesn't regret draining his fun bucket a little bit.
He didn't drain his fun bucket.
No,
you make it sound like we had lobster and caviar.
No, drain just a little bit to have lunch with us. But if he did, that's fine. He has learned that he doesn't need to go out to lunch with us ever again. But I think that's what we've been doing, maybe just not labeling it that. Like we had the economy party. I don't know if we'll do that again. I thought it was fun, but we'll talk off camera about this.
We'll do it again.
Okay.
Don't listen to him.
Okay.
But also, the fun bucket exists specifically to carve out this money and put it over here. So it's already accounted for. And I think mentally that can be very helpful when people are trying to think of, oh, I only spend $40,000 a year, but I also want to do this thing that's going to cost more than that. Well, enter your fun bucket. It's all you've taken your $1 million and you pulled your 40,000 out, and at the end of the year you're like, oh, I'm at 998,000. Is that closer? Yeah, I'm at 998,000. Don't drink before you record a podcast, apparently. So I'm almost at to $1 million at the end of the year after I pulled out my 40,000. Next year I'm going to pull out a 40,000. But I want to take a little bit from my fun bucket and start small. If the idea of, $10,000 from your $40,000 gives you the heebie-jeebies, start smaller. Start with 5. Start with 2. Start with something. Take that money, carve it out of your net worth, put it into your Home Depot bucket. They're $5 at homedepot.com. Put it in your Home Depot bucket. And then when you need to pay for something, you just pull it from that Home Depot bucket. And you'll watch don't really put it in a Home Depot bucket. Put it in a high yield savings account. Don't be silly. But then you pull it out. Interest is a powerful thing.
Yeah. Do we keep our fun bucket money in Mindy money, your cryptocurrency? Has that taken off yet, the Mindy money? Or
email Mindy at mindyonmoney.com to audition to be my host, my co-host.
You've had your initial coin offering, right, which is like an IPO for a new cryptocurrency. But yeah, we can probably keep our fun bucket in Mindy money. If it goes to 0, we just won't have a fun bucket anymore.
I'm so done with you.
We'll have to eat beans and rice. But yeah, I do like this because it's forced spending, and we don't want to die with crap tons of money. I think that would be a mistake.
I think our kids want us to.
Yeah, they might want. Our kids are totally in favor of that plan, but I am not. I want to have some fun with it before we croak.
Croak? Really? Is that the way you're going to phrase that? That's such an ugly phrase.
How would you phrase it? Kick the bucket.
Kick the bucket.
Kick the fun bucket.
Kick the fun bucket. Okay, so not everything you spend on is going to be a success, and that's okay. That said, how do you know something's worth it if you don't test it out? So we would love to hear from you. How are you adding to your spending to enhance your life? Leave a comment in our Facebook group, which can be found at facebook.com/groups/MindyOnMoney. Next week, we are talking taxes, but don't worry, it's actually a really fun conversation. We learned some really great tax lessons from our friend Sean Mullaney. Taxes really can be fun.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Bye.